Once again, North Carolina can't make a few key plays while their opponent does, and consequently, the losing streak is up to 3.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Saturday, October 5th, 2024. Welcome into this live postcast edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every day. Oh man, welcome into you everydayers, all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders. It's going to be one of those therapy sessions 3 Saturdays in a row now that we've had to do it, but we're here and we're doing it because that's the deal. This episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Gang, look, here we go. Carolina now drops to 3-3, 0-2 in the ACC as Pittsburgh comes in and wins for the first time ever at North Carolina. The score is 34-24. Here's what we do on these live postcasts, especially on these therapy sessions is, I'll give you things as straightforward as I can. The bad, obviously, but some good. What are the silver linings we can pick out? We'll have a couple of ad breaks. I want to get to your comments and questions if we have some of those that pop in, and then we'll get out of here and get on with our Saturday. And gear up for basketball season and, come on down, Caleb Wilson. Hopefully that unofficial visit is going well. Here's where I want to start. And the most important thing, I've mentioned this a couple times in the past several weeks. One of the questions I got last week in the live postcast was, as you look at Carolina's schedule, what do you see? I think this was from our friend Marion Kennedy. Do you see games that Carolina can win? Can they get to being bowl eligible? And again, I'll say the thing is, yes, every game on this schedule, including today, including last week against Duke, is a game that you could absolutely win, but it's a game that you could absolutely lose. The margins are way too close. There is no team that Carolina is demonstrably better than, and there is no team on this schedule that Carolina is demonstrably worse than. So that means that every little thing you look at is a massive, massive deal. And so Carolina then has to win all those little small things that add up to winning football. You got to win the turnover battle. You got to win the big play battle. You got to win the penalty battle. You got to win the random special teams battles. You got to win just these types of things. Carolina did not do enough of that today. Pittsburgh did do enough of that today, and consequently, the Tar Heels dropped to 3-3 and 0-2 in the ACC. And that is not going to be enough to win football games going forward. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you go on the live stats and look at the big plays that occurred in this game, and basically the way the live stats broadcast characterizes this is a big play is a pass play that's 15 yards or more and a rush play that is 10 yards or more. When you look at that, Carolina actually won the big play battle in this game 13-9. Here's the interesting thing. When you dig down deeper on it, Carolina won that battle, but it was all chunks here, like smaller chunks. Pittsburgh's were like massive big play chunks, the vast majority of which occurred in the first 2.5 quarters of this game that were all through the air. And when it's all said and done, Carolina only had one big play that was 25 yards or more. That was the 48-yarder to Nate McCullum. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, had 4 plays that were 25 yards or longer. If you reduce it to 20 yards or longer through the air or on the ground, Pitt had 8 plays that went for 25 or more yards in this game, while Carolina had 5. And so you're encouraged about that on the Carolina side of things, but you're out here giving up 8 plays that go for a quarter of the field or more. That's not a winning concoction for football. You got to be able to wrap that up. Another part of it is that Carolina had no answer for Reed, for Pittsburgh's running back. And I know a lot of people were like talking about, Isaac, you got to account for Pittsburgh's running back that is now eligible and is coming back, and it's like, yeah, okay, fine, but have you seen what Desmond Reed has been doing? This dude, I mean, to be fair, he is electric and a great football player. And quite frankly, Carolina held him down well on the ground. 18 rushes for 55 yards, an average of 3.1. You feel good about that. The big problem is that the Tar Heels had no answer for him coming out of the backfield as a receiver. 11 receptions for 155 yards, including the longest play of the game for either team, a 72-yarder and a touchdown for the day. And Reed was in and out in the second half, a little bit banged up, even went back to the locker room at some point. But it didn't matter by then. He had already done all his work, and Carolina had no answers for it. So that's another part of this. And then even when he wasn't as explosive, guess what? That's the moment at which Eli Holstein started calling his own number on the ground and just started picking up these chunk yardage, because in terms of when you look at Pittsburgh's big plays on the ground, both of them were Eli Holstein runs. No running backs. Pitt only had 2 big play runs, a 24-yarder and a 20-yarder, both of them coming from the quarterback. And that was the thing. That crucial last drive that Carolina was in on defense, where if Pitt got any points, 3 or 7, that was it, because it was a 2-score game at that point, and it would be over. Carolina kept getting Pitt to second or third down and then could not get off the field because Holstein was there to pick it up, or, just enough through the air. Not doing enough on those just critical moments in between the cracks that have to happen. Another thing, this is maybe one of the biggest of those in a 50-50 game, things could fall either way moments of this game, were the fourth down plays. North Carolina went for it on fourth down 6 times in this game, and they only made 2 of them. And that was on the same drive. There was that long, it was like a 19-play drive for the Tar Heels. They picked up back-to-back first downs on what I thought were nice play calls, nice play designs to pick those up. But then they go for it down when at this point, I personally would have gone for 3. I understand Mac Brown's decision to go for it there. And frankly, I think the analytics would have said it, and I get that. And so I fault him not at all for that. But the play call there was a low percentage play call, where it was just kind of this out to, was it Bryson Nesbitt? And it seemed like a low percentage throw. I feel like if you're going to go ahead and go for it there on 4th and 2 or whatever it was, with a chip shot field goal in your back pocket for Noah Burnett, oh, by the way, you either rely on Omarion Hampton or you find a play call with a higher percentage pop pass. And then there's other Carolina missed on 3 other fourth downs. There was one when, was it 4th and 1 or 4th and 2? Very close. And Jobe Chriswell is back in shotgun. And, it's one of those where, can we not get the brotherly shove a la the Philadelphia Eagles? Do you not give it to Omarion Hampton, which I know you tried with Omarion Hampton down in the red zone again later, which I thought that was absolutely the right call. You can't take 3 there because you're later in the game. And I thought the hole was there. Hampton just looked like he got tripped up. There were some questionable spots there. I'll say that, in terms of the ref spotting the ball. But it's just like these kind of things are adding up to Carolina being unable to do those little things in a toss-up game, in a 50-50 game, to ultimately win. So the fourth down plays left quite a bit to be desired in this game. Carolina had 10 total possessions. 4 of those 10, 40%, wound up with turnovers on downs because Carolina couldn't convert on 4th down. So you either got to fix that or just take 3 when you can take 3. And if so, had Carolina taken 3 in that long extended drive, that puts them in much different play call decision makings later in the game. And again, you can't, I'm going to go back and, hindsight is 20/20, because that's my job to second guess coaches. But you would have put yourself in a better position there. Penalties. Carolina had done, as we're talking about these things that just are the razor's edge of a win or loss in these close games, Carolina did a much better job tidying up their penalties today. Only had 5 total penalties, although they also had the kickoff that went out of bounds to start the game. So there's that. And so you're appreciative of that, especially after last week where it was 10. but a couple of them came in key moments in the first half. There was at least 2 separate situations where Carolina had big chunk plays negated by penalties. And I know there's always the argument of like, well, yeah, maybe that's why the chunk play happened. Sure, I hear that. But I didn't think in either of those there were. So Carolina just struggling to do all the things you need to do to be able to win a tight game, which is what every game should be throughout the rest of the season. Does that mean they're going to lose them all the rest of the season? Absolutely not. They can still continue to figure things out and get it done, but they've not been able to do so in the last 3 weeks, and that is concerning. That is key, and it is concerning. Now, obviously, there are silver linings from this game, so we want to get to a few of those, talk about some happy things, then we'll see if we got any questions and observations before we get out of here, and we'll do that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about our friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page, actually, where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. The Final Four odds just came out late in the week on FanDuel. Let me hit them with you. Unfortunately, Duke leads the way at plus 190, and then UConn and Kansas both at plus 210, Alabama and Houston plus 260, and then Carolina, Gonzaga, and Iowa State all at plus 420. That top 10 is rounded out with Auburn and Arizona at plus 500. So if you want to get in on any of that action, or maybe any of the football action going on today or tomorrow in the NFL, go check it all out at FanDuel.com. It's America's #1 sportsbook. All right, gang, here's what we're going to do as we carry on is I'm going to go ahead and pull up the final stat sheet for you to check out here, seeing what it is. And honestly, like I said, if you're starting to watch it, or maybe if you're listening back to this later, you can pull up the box score and see it. I mean, yes, the yardage, for example, favors Pitt 520 to 416. But Carolina had more net rushing yards. There's all these things where, again, the numbers, the macro level numbers are so tight and so close that you got to find ways to win in just the little tiny small things. Let's celebrate a couple of the good things that happen. For one, it's another 100-yard day on the ground for Omarion Hampton. Carolina, a couple people were saying the Tar Heels just don't deserve how great he is. I mean, goodness, what a great football player Omarion Hampton is. 23 rushes for 106 yards, had I think 3 catches. Yes, 3 catches for 16 yards. And I got to tell you, that one play in the first half was straight up Neo from the Matrix, that he somehow twisted and contorted his body and leaned back in a way that if I had done that at 40 years old, I would have been laying on the rug, panting for air, begging for a chiropractor to come out on the field and just like either fix me or end me, because it would have been over. I do not know how he does that, but it was insane. And so the more Carolina can get him going, the better. And I mean, I guess that's part of it is you wish you could get more out of that. But again, as Pitt starts to key on him, the offense has to be able to pick things up in other places. Also, on the silver lining for offensive side of things, massive day for Nate McCollum, 10 receptions for 128 yards, and the longest play of the day for Carolina, a 48-yard reception. Jobe Chriswell starts to find McCollum, and this has been a storyline, is that Carolina has to get him more involved, and clearly he was today. And no other pass catchers, though, had more than 4 receptions. Both tight ends had 4 catches. Copenhaver, 4 receptions on 4 targets. That's perfect. Nesbitt was targeted 8 times. There was that one in the end zone he couldn't haul in. I thought it was, I mean, yes, he could have had it. A very tough catch. Coach Brown obviously didn't like it. He talked about that. It was coming out at halftime when he mentioned that, but is what it is. 3 catches for Hampton. But the problem is, out of everybody else, only 3 other total receptions, 2 to J.J. Jones and 1 to Kobe Paysour. Got to be able to get more than that out of Jones, out of Paysour. And interestingly today, those skill position guys, the starting lineup changed again. The last couple of weeks, it's been 2 wide receivers and then both Copenhaver and Nesbitt in the starting lineup. Today, Nesbitt did not start. It was just Copenhaver along with J.J. Jones, Kobe Paysour, and Nate McCollum. So that's been interesting to watch those personnel packages change and develop week to week. So a couple of good things there on that side of it, and had a couple more I wanted to mention as well. Obviously, one of these small things that Carolina did well in this game that I was hopeful. I was like, man, maybe this can be the thing that turns the tide late in the game, was Carolina finally got that key massive pick six from Caleb Cost. It was a huge play, and Carolina almost got a silly block in the back penalty right before he scored. Thankfully, it wasn't quite enough for the refs to throw some yellow laundry, but man, what a play for Caleb Cost. Had another in the end zone where man and ball arrive at the same time. He jars it free. And then unfortunately, he and Jahvaree Ritzie had that big friendly fire hit on each other later in the game where they were both down for a little bit. And so hopefully those guys are okay. We're recording this before, obviously, before I've been able to listen to Coach Brown's comments post game. So we don't know about that and not able to talk about that right now. Another good thing, positive thing, and even though in the fact that I have to say this means that it's clearly such a problem, and you'll understand as soon as I say it. No blocked punts today for the Tar Heels. That's great news. But like I just said, the fact that we even have to say that is concerning. But hey, great. Clean that up after 2 weeks, and let's hope that continues to go. Another good thing, not necessarily about the game, but so great to see Carolina get to honor Julius Peppers today in multiple ways, by the way. And so just good to have him back. He was at Carolina basketball yesterday, just hanging out with those guys. And so really good to see all of that. So, there are some good line things. Something I wanted to say about Jobe Chriswell that's interesting to me as I continue to watch him. He has some good poise and some good savvy that I like to see. For example, there were a couple plays today where he had Pitt guys in his lap or wrapping up around his ankles, and he would just deliver a great ball. It's almost like, I feel like sometimes he's more accurate when he's got a dude in his face. But a couple other things that really impressed me about Jobe Chriswell today. There were times when he could have taken a sack and didn't. Like there was he was going to dump off to somebody. It was probably Omarion out in the left flat, was covered. None of the other reads were there. And so he just overthrew Omarion, clearly a throwaway, but a great decision there. I also like that he's not a nervous jitterbug in terms of leaving the pocket. That's one of the things for me is pocket awareness with the quarterback. When the pocket breaks down a little bit, how quickly do you take off? Like when you should, there are times when you absolutely should, but there's other times when it's just frantic and you go. Chriswell has been able to keep his wits about him, move around in the pocket, even step up close to the line of scrimmage and find a guy. There were multiple of those plays today. The thing that I'm seeing from Chriswell still is, man, he's just missing a lot of these deep balls on overthrows. The arm is clearly there. He's just got too much on it. There's not enough touch to drop it over the top and in. And those are plays that Carolina has routinely been making the past 5 years with Drake May and with Sam Howell. And unfortunately, that is not part of their arsenal this year, at least in any sort of regular way. There are going to be times when that happens. But unfortunately, we saw it up close and personal against us today as Eli Holstein completed pass after pass after pass that way, as Carolina's zone defense just kept letting guys across the middle of the field be wide open or get beat deep. I mean, look, there was that one catch. The first big chunk play from Pitt was an incredible catch from Mumpfield. Like, give him his flowers on that. That was insane. And there were a couple other plays where, Marcus Allen, I remember specifically, was in good position, stride for stride, he had jammed off the line, caused a Pitt receiver to look like he was overthrown, but it was, I thought, Allen being in good position. So there was some of that, but there was just too much of Carolina allowing that from Holstein. Offensive line, another good thing from them. And obviously, as I just said, I thought Jobe Chriswell helped them out, but no sacks until Carolina's last offensive play of the game. And at that point, the game's already over anyway. But frustratingly, on the other side, that was literally the only sack of the game for either team on the last meaningful play of the game. Difficult to reckon with that. Another piece of good news was great to see the Butcher out on the field today. Obviously didn't start, unfortunately. Jacoby Cowan was in there again to start the game. And then Rucker would come in at a few key third down moments. In fact, his first one came basically uncontested up the middle on third down, forced Holstein to throw it more quickly than he wanted to, an overthrow, and Carolina gets the ball back. But there were a couple other third down plays where he wasn't able to be out there, unfortunately, and that was tough to reckon with. So all in all, for Carolina in this game, not a competitive game, a game that you're in and just not able to do enough of the little things that help you win ball games to overcome. And that now has been the story of the past 2 weeks. Carolina, I mean, they just got taken out behind the woodshed against James Madison. You're not winning that game. But they have done enough and needed just about 5 plays in the game to go differently, and you win last week and this week. That's the fact of the matter. That's all it's got to be. But that is the attention to detail that you must have, and Carolina's not getting it. For example, like there was a tunnel screen pass, and Pitt was all up on it, but it was not. I can't remember if it was Pacor blocking for McCollum or the opposite, but whichever one was, the receiver did not cut hard back enough toward Chriswell before heading upfield. And there's just so many pieces of that were not executed with the precision they had to be. That's my bigger point in talking about that play. Those are the things that Carolina has got to get right to beat Georgia Tech next week at home before they go to their open week and can hopefully figure out a whole bunch of stuff in that scenario. So, that's where we're at, and that's where we're dealing with. Okay, gang, today, as of right now, at least, we don't have any just key questions or comments or anything. Big Kush is in the chat, and he says, what's up, Kush? Good to see you. So I'll tell you what, today, we're just going to go on and get out of here. I know everyone is sad and frustrated and disappointed, and look, that's just what you got to deal with sometimes in sports. I know there are going to be even louder and more calls for Mac Brown's head and job right now, and I get that. That's where we're at. And yes, that music is going to get louder, but I think the biggest mistake you could make if you're Bubba Cunningham is to end this in the middle of the season. I think the biggest mistake you can make if you're Mac Brown is to try to walk away right now in the middle of the season. And last week, I advocated for patience with Mac Brown, and that was at the week-to-week level. Yes, big picture level, I'm with a lot of you on this, that I think it might be in the wisest interest of North Carolina for this to be the last year. But you do not, I think it would be foolish to do anything right now. Because yes, you're on a 3-game losing streak and the season carries on, and you could lose a lot of these games, but again, you could win a lot of them as well. You just got to clean up the details of a few things and make it happen. Get these third down stops, get Holstein down. And I know he's a solid runner that can do a lot of things, but Carolina has put themselves in a position now where there is just no margin and they got to move forward. Also, Caleb Wilson on campus again for this unofficial visit. There are good vibes coming out. And so we'll see what happens with that. But again, hopefully the coaching staff, as I said earlier in the week, can get some assurances from him, can lock him up right here, right now, while he is back on campus for round 2. We'll see what happens with that. All right, gang, here's where we go from here. We're going to be back together on Monday. We'll have a few basketball things to talk through, see if there's anything else we want to talk through from football. Obviously, we'll have a Schade stat of the game. I'll have the weekend whip around from what the rest of Carolina athletics is doing. And then we will carry on through the week, getting closer and closer and closer to these exhibition games, and cannot wait for those. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, make sure you go ahead and do that so you don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. If you're not a Locked On Tar Heels insider where you get to go all the way deep on this thing, you can chat with me one-on-one through text message. You can have access to all of my stats and charts and data. You get priority access for mailbag questions and other things of that nature. Would love to have you. A free 2-week trial and then just $5 a month after that. It's like just give up one coffee and you get to come hang out with me all the time, and it's a great way to support the show, oh, by the way. Also, join the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family, man. It's a great place to be. That one is absolutely free, and the link is in the show notes. All right, guys, a tough one today, but it still is always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Lots of people going through lots of bigger things than a football game, and so this is a great way to have just taken our, just let our minds wander elsewhere for a couple hours. But man, there are people out there going through real things with real problems right now, and our thoughts and prayers are with you. But it is always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be back again on Monday. But until then, peace.